Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining the spaces. We're going to kick off in just 1 second. We're just waiting for everyone to get ready. And then we're excited to tell you all about Fuel's newest testnet. Just one more second, guys. CEO Nick is having some technical difficulties, but we'll kick off.
Fuel?
Hey, everybody. Sorry again for the delay and the radio silence.
So Dave,
Let's do it.
so I don't
I mean, there's a lot of different changes there. Let's just hop into a discussion, and I'm sure the interesting parts will surface. Yes, I mean, this is an area I'm not super deep on. This is a lower level change to the protocol, but peer-to-peer is obviously super important for decentralized networks. This is what lets all the different nodes on a blockchain kind of stay in sync and stay communicated with each other. So I know our team's been working really hard on just kind of optimizing this peer-to-peer layer and making sure that every node in the network can stay up to sync and run consistently and keep the chain running well. I'm looking over the post. I'm not super familiar with what changed. Sorry, I'm just looking over the changes now. I mean, I know there's been a lot of new updates to the Sway language. Our goal for Sway has been to build a language that's a domain, a DSL, domain-specific language, a language that's optimized for, building blockchain applications, decentralized applications. And while, I kind of think of Sway as being a bit of a baby between Solidity and Rust. So those are kind of obviously the two main languages that are used by other smart contracts platforms. We've kind of taken, I think, a lot of the really nice modern features of Rust and tried to combine that with some of the simplicity, the ease of use of Solidity. And I think a lot of the changes that have been associated with Beta-4 have been bringing in some of the features of Rust. A lot of smaller things I see, like type aliases and some just other changes to the compilation. So we're basically trying to give anyone that comes from the Rust community, any Rust developers, all the nice features that they know and love from Rust. Or at least the ones that we think are relevant. But we have, of course, anyone who's written Sway knows we have simplified the developer experience a bit. You don't need to deal with kind of variable ownership, borrowing, cloning, all those things like that. So I think that's something that anybody coming from Solidity or really coming from anything else other than Rust will find helpful. Is that Rust is a really great language. Great. It's got a great community, great ecosystem around it, but it is also known for having a bit of a learning curve because some of those functionalities are kind of things that don't exist in other languages. So we have simplified it a bit. And I think, these updates kind of fit that path of us bringing in the nice features from Rust without, while trying to keep it still a easy language for developers to get their heads around. Yeah, of course. I mean, if anybody would be interested in something like that, feel free to, let us know. Either you can kind of reply to Space or post on our Discord or on our forum. If that's something that would be helpful, we'd be happy to do that. And if anyone has any areas that they're having any trouble with or questions about, please let us know in any of those places that I just mentioned, because we are always trying to make sure we have good documentation, good resources out there to help people get up to speed on Sway.
but is there?
I guess the one I'll touch on is this is one that I was kind of involved with the development of, so I'm happy to talk about it, is the multi-token support. So this is, Fuel is, I think many people who know Fuel know that Fuel is one of the only asset-oriented blockchain architectures out there. Most blockchains, require developers to kind of implement their own token. So in the EVM, you have to kind of write ERC20, ERC721, ERC1155, whatever types of contract. SRC tokens on Solana. Most blockchains have some type of standard where you write a token in a smart contract. Whereas Fuel is, we build tokens directly into the application level. Ooh, hold on. Well, I think Nick is trying to join, but I'll keep going until he shows up. So that one change that was introduced in this newest in the new Beta-4 update is the ability for a smart contract on Fuel to create not just one type of token, but as many types of tokens as they want. This will be kind of similar to any Solidity developers will probably be familiar with ERC 1155. This is the token standard that lets you, make lots of arbitrary types of tokens. Uniswap v4 is probably the most notable code base using it, although Uniswap v4 is not live yet. Also, some of the NFT marketplaces use this standard. So the really cool thing about having kind of one unified type of token is that you can use the same kind of token anywhere. Well, I guess I'll rewind it a bit and say by supporting multiple tokens in coming from a single smart contract means you can have things like NFTs be native assets. You can have these like 1155 style multi token contracts. I don't know a better way to describe that be a thing. So the really cool thing is now all assets on Fuel are native assets. So NFTs will be native assets. Things like liquidity positions, things like that. They're all native assets. And there's a lot of really cool benefits of this. One thing that I really like is that it doesn't really distinguish between something being fungible, non-fungible. A non-fungible token is just a token that only has a supply of one unit. And this means we have projects like Spark Protocol that are building a order book exchange on Fuel, which is, generally, I believe, built to be, trading fungible tokens for other fungible tokens. But now that, say, NFTs are also native assets, just like fungible tokens, you could have these order book exchanges also act as NFT exchanges. You could trade a bunch of ETH for, some NFTs, some Fuel Punk or something like that on Fuel. You could also, if someone's building a lending protocol, that Composability Labs team has also built, like Swayland. If there are valuable, assets, valuable NFTs that people feel are valuable enough to be collateral, you could use an NFT as collateral just in the same way that that same protocol could accept fungible tokens as collateral. So I think this opens up a lot of different use cases like that, that applications can support all different types of assets. It makes things easier for developers. You don't need to write a lot of boilerplate code just to make an asset. Which also will help with security. And I think we'll just open up a lot of new types of applications. So I'm super interested in that. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a number of projects are already implementing it. One of the reasons we added the support was that some of our ecosystem projects were asking for the support, and we just saw that we both had demand from some of the projects in the Fuel ecosystem, and it just made a lot of sense for us that this was an ideal way to structure the system, because again, one thing that people seem to really appreciate about Fuel is that it is asset oriented. Kind of this multi-token support really shows our commitment to making assets a really core part of the Fuel chain. Well, I think I saw some people from Fuel maybe. Sure. Okay. Yeah, cool. If anyone has questions, feel free to request the stage, and if not, I guess we can keep just talking about some of maybe the other changes on here. One other one I see here is parallel predicate execution. This is a important part of one of the big benefits of Fuel, and one of the ways that Fuel kind of aims to be this the fastest execution layer for Ethereum is through parallelization. We've seen some other chains really leverage parallelization to show how much faster they are than the EVM, and that's Fuel's kind of built from the ground up for this type of parallelization. And you can see that with this update, which parallelizes the execution predicates. I know if anyone doesn't know about predicates, that's a whole rabbit hole to go down. I think we've done some talks about predicates in the past, but they're these kind of some ways like stateless contracts almost that permission the use of assets. And they are now, we expect, in the beginning, there might not be a ton of predicates, but since they are such an interesting primitive, we expect there'll be a lot of projects that build innovative uses of predicates. For example, Spark Protocol is using predicates for their order books. We're also probably going to see, one really good use of predicates is kind of this native time abstraction. So Fuel will be supporting, for example, Ethereum wallets like MetaMask. At some point, we'll probably add other chains like, Solana wallets like Phantom, and Cosmos wallets like Kepler, maybe even Bitcoin wallets. Those will all be run by predicates. So by enabling this parallel execution of these predicates, that's just something that's going to drive down the amount of time it takes to evaluate a transaction, verify a block on Fuel, and when we can make verification faster, that means we have more transactions, lower fees, better performance. So this is just another step on Fuel's mission to be super performant and one of the most performant rollups, aiming to be the most performant rollup on Ethereum. Yeah, I mean, I don't. I can take a bit of a guess. I know I've talked to the Spark team about it, but they would obviously be better to speak to it. But my understanding is, you can use a predicate as kind of a limit order. So like at a high level of predicate, it's this stateless piece of code that conditions, how coins can be sent. So what you can do is you can write a predicate that says, basically, imagine I have 1 ETH and I want to sell that ETH. I can send that ETH to a predicate and have that predicate, the code of that predicate will say, essentially, you can take this ETH if you send David 1,600 USDC. And so if I create a transaction where I send, where somebody sends me 1,600 USDC, they can also take that ETH from the predicate. That's effectively a limit order. I get my USDC, they get the ETH, the trade's been completed. You'd also probably want to add a condition to that predicate, which says also David can take his ETH back, essentially. So that's kind of how a simple limit order would work, built in a predicate. I assume that's basically how how that predicate has worked for them. But yeah, I know they've been working really hard on optimizing their stack and building some really interesting stuff. So it's possible they have cooler features predicates that I'm not even aware of. We'll have to do, I see that they're in the call, but yeah, we'll have to do maybe another one future and have them fully explain how they're using predicates.
What?
I mean, the thing that I've been most excited about for Fuel is, we were just talking about predicates a bit and kind of how you can build limit orders and stuff with that. There are some of these, Fuel has some really interesting features and design decisions, things like predicates, UTXO scripts, things like that allow kind of completely different ways to build applications. A lot of the projects building on Fuel now, we have a lot of great projects building on Fuel, and they're building things in similar ways that applications are built on other blockchains. Now, they do get a lot of advantages of building on Fuel, being able to take advantage of the high performance of Fuel, the native assets, the parallelization, things like that. But what I think I'm really excited for is that people to really start wrapping their head around some of these new primitives, these new design decisions, coming up with new ways to build applications that wasn't possible, maybe even whole new applications themselves that weren't possible with things like the EVM. So that's something that I think will take a while. It'll take a lot of people just kind of really wrapping their head around it. It took me a bit to, I've been writing applications on Fuel and Sway for quite some time, but it took me a while to really start kind of thinking in predicates, thinking outside the box, like thinking outside of the Ethereum style program-centric way of building applications, thinking using kind of more of an ASIC-centric, predicate-centric way of building out. So excited to see more projects doing that.
Go ahead.
We have, I think it looks like Spark is asked to join.
Popped up. And
Hey guys, sorry, unfortunately,
Glad to join.
thank it's really test platform, like on actually how it takes calls pretty fast. We're actually impressed. Now, some of the you have the I directly access are the line like
this is something that's actually maybe a bit over my head. I'm not familiar with the builders, things like that. Yeah, it would have been great if Nick was here to answer that. I know light clients is a key part of Fuel's architecture and Fuel's design decisions. Is that we've built a virtual machine that's designed to be really easily light client proven, which has a ton of use cases. This makes it easy to prove to kind of to act as a layer 2 and prove to a layer 1, to create fraud proofs or ZK proofs using that light client. It's also just good for decentralization in general, that any user can kind of verify a light client proof from their device, from their phone, from any hardware, without needing to run a very expensive full node. So light clients is a huge part of Fuel's stack. I think it's something that really differentiates Fuel. There's a lot of projects building, I know at least 1 or 2 projects building light clients for the EVM, but it's just really difficult to do and requires very large proofs because Ethereum just wasn't really built with light clients in mind. And that's something that we think really sets the Fuel virtual machine apart, these other things. Yeah, in terms of what you're asking about builders and stuff like that, that's something I'm not familiar with. So we'll have to get Nick to kind of talk more about that stuff some other time.
and
Good question. Yeah, I mean, any kind of DeFi primitives are cool to see. It's great. I'm blanking on the name, but I think the
Yeah.
Fluid. That's right. That's right. Yeah, very excited about that. But if any other projects have other designs for decentralized stablecoins, super cool to see. And the other thing that I'll kind of hint at, we can't share a ton of details, but we're talking some projects that are really interested in building not just applications on Fuel, but kind of taking the Fuel stack and building customized, unique rollups using Fuel stack. A lot of projects are kind of seeing that this is a really nice, one of the only stacks that's built from the ground up to be a layer two. And so when teams are looking to build customized layer twos, a lot of them are pretty interested in Fuel. So I'm excited to see more exploration in that space.
Like Eclipse kind
Yeah, sort of. I guess kind of also a bit like Base, that there's Optimism created one chain and then Base is a second chain using the same stack. But to me, actually, I think the stuff on Fuel seems even much more interesting. That, Base is great. I'm really excited to see it, but I don't totally understand the benefit, given that it looks basically exactly like Optimism. Whereas, some of these other projects, which again, I wish I could speak more to, but I don't want to ruin anybody's, kind of rollout plan. Some of these projects are building things that are very unique. They're changing the architecture to do things that they, adding special functionality that wouldn't be part of the main Fuel chain. So that's a bit of a longer term path for Fuel. That's not the things that are going to be launching soon, but I think that just shows like a really exciting future once we have kind of one Fuel chain as kind of the core with liquidity and projects like Spark kind of providing liquidity at the center of it. And then these other Fuel chains that are kind of interoperable with it outside of it that offer this additional functionality.
Nice. Also about
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I'm much my interest and my experience leans much more towards the DeFi space, but of course, we'd love to see, great NFT projects building on Fuel as well. I know we already have, oh man, I'm blanking on all of our ecosystem project names. The NFT marketplace.
Thunder.
Thunder. Thank you so much. Yes. Thunder is building a really great NFT marketplace. So I know we'll have a cool NFT ecosystem as well. And yeah, as I was kind of saying before, I think it'll be really cool to see, given Fuel has this native asset architecture, that we'll be able to see kind of I think a bit of a convergence between NFTs and fungible assets because there's not like at a technical level, there's not really much differentiation between NFTs and fungible assets. So we'll be able to see probably more NFTs inside DeFi and more DeFi applications using NFTs, things like that. I think that's super interesting.
Nice. Now, so you're talking about DeFi. So what DeFi, would there be a way?
Well, so they basically are by default. So kind of Fuel unlike Solana where and most chains where you implement your token in code, according to some token standard. With Fuel, the tokens are all native. So, it's more similar to 1155 in the sense of that assets can be fungible or non-fungible. Making an asset non-fungible just means setting the supply to 1. But it's not like 1155 in the sense that 1155 is a token standard, and in Fuel, in some sense, tokens don't even need to conform to a standard. They're just tokens. Kind of like how on Ethereum, ETH doesn't conform to its token standard. It's just ETH. It's built into the chain itself. It's native. So all assets on Fuel are native by default. We do have a token standard. That's one thing that's come out recently, and I think that's also included in this Beta-4 blog post. But the token standard on Fuel is mostly concerned with like metadata about tokens. So name, symbol, number of decimals, things like that. It doesn't deal with, like the ERC20 token and the ERC721, 1155. Those token standards all define like how to transfer tokens and how applications can, use tokens, read balances, things like that. In Fuel, that's all natively built into the chain. So the only thing the standard needs to do is specify, like what's the symbol of a token, how many so an NFT in, with these native Fuel assets it's just a token that has a supply of 1.
I kind of feel.
That'd be awesome. I mean, I guess a mutable would be the closest thing to an NFT place, but I think they cover a bit of a different space. I'm not even sure if they support smart contracts. I do think it'd be the native assets, native NFTs is a really interesting kind of value prop of Fuel, and would love to see more projects taking advantage of that. I think it could be really great for gaming. A lot of gaming projects want to do a lot with NFTs, and they want to allow those NFTs to move around a lot and be very flexible. So Fuel kind of gives you the performance of native assets, and it also gives you this nice interoperability where your assets can work across all different types of exchanges and things like that.
Yeah, I more they have a really
Yeah, Mutable is great. I've liked it, but yeah, one thing I remember was one issue with some of at least the earlier ZK rollups like the Mutable. I think maybe some of the newer ones this is an issue, but you have to kind of the onboarding process is a bit funky because you kind of have to have separate keys. Normal Ethereum wallets don't natively work with some of these rollups, so you kind of have to sign a bunch of messages and things like that. And one great thing with Fuel is, as I mentioned earlier, we'll have this native account abstraction, which will let us support basically any kind of wallet. So, you can use Fuel native wallets like the Fuel wallet or the Fuelit mobile wallet, but you'll also be able to come with your MetaMask. You'll be able to use, Phantom, Kepler, any wallet from any ecosystem. Just connect right in, and no setup. It'll just work right out of the box.
that I can't because I think less than
For sure, and I think even moving beyond wallets, having one trend we've seen recently is support for passkey authentication using kind of the fingerprint scanner or the facial recognition of MacBooks and iPhones and things like that to sign transactions. That's something we're kind of looking into heavily as well. So that's kind of for a brand new user, that's one of the easiest ways to onboard is just not even need to set up a wallet. Just kind of use the security of your phone or your laptop that you already know and trust. So, I'm sure power users, they're going to want to have a wallet. There's going to be a lot of wallets that offer a lot of great features, but lowering that barrier to entry is something that'll certainly hopefully bring a lot of people into the space.
Okay, you guys that.
Yeah, absolutely. We've looked at this is something that already does exist. We've seen some implementations on EVM chains, so it's technically very possible. One thing we've seen though is that on EVM chains, it's just really expensive because you have to kind of implement a lot of this cryptography in a smart contract, and it's almost like it works, but it's infeasible. And with a lot of Fuel's features like predicates, which offer this really lightweight native account abstraction, and also some of the kind of native cryptography built into the Fuel VM, that we can really drive that cost down to the point where basically it'll be very cheap to use kind of this, use your phone, use whatever as a key. And as you said, that'll be a really amazing user experience that you don't even need to kind of set up a wallet, install anything. You can just be running some website.
Yeah, that would be a game kind of out. Alex, they're crazy, but the way it allows, you wanted something like it's still Web 2 kind of experience, but web structure and back and everything.
Yeah, and that's definitely our goal is to, the weird thing in Web 3 is there's been this kind of digression of user experience. We've had 30 years of the kind of the Web 2 space. I don't know, I guess Web 2 maybe started in the mid 2000s. So 20, 30, depending on where you draw the line, years of the web or Web 2 to get mature, to get really good user experience. And then we come to crypto and it just becomes so difficult to use. So we feel that we're at a bit of an inflection point where the focus moves from solving some of the deeper problems of figuring out just what crypto is going to be, what it's going to look like, how blockchains are going to work. We think we've already kind of solved scalability with this modular approach to building blockchains with things like rollups. With the architecture of Fuel, we think is the best architecture for a really performant rollup. And that now that we've kind of solved performance, the next step is really focusing on user experience, making sure it's really easy for users to onboard, to use applications and have them feel like the applications they're used to in Web 2, not feel like these clunky Web 3 apps. So yeah, we should definitely talk more offline about some of the areas we're exploring in the wallet space.
Yes, awesome.
We love you guys too. We're very happy to have you guys building such amazing stuff.
Thanks. Well, no problem. Sure. I think it's nice.
Absolutely.
For every David.
I blame Elon for the technical issues. We'll leave it there. Take care.